Well, greetings all, and happy 4th of July. Not July 6th, but it was this week, so hope you had a great holiday. I did just want to touch upon a couple things that came up in the discussion boards this week and offer a reissue a challenge moving forward. So, what were those things that came up? Yes. I guess in two of the discussion boards. So the one about the memory tests, I think one of the question prompts was to ask you whether behaviorist or social cognitive views provided a good explanation of the results going on there. So, and a couple of you said yes, which is fine. I have a hard time seeing it, and I still have a hard time seeing it after reading your posts. So I think it's important to consider a couple things. So with behaviorist views of learning, they're really, provide an explanation about human learning through the concepts or the processes of reinforcement and punishment. So I guess the question is, what was going on in the memory tests to reinforce or punish the responses that would result in the learning? So I'm hard-pressed to see that. But it's important to consider that. And then with social cognitive theory has this triadic reciprocal explanation for human behavior: environmental factors, personal factors, and behavior, and how they interact. And it really rests on this idea, or it introduces this idea of personal factors playing a role. And self-efficacy beliefs specifically are a big cornerstone of social cognitive theory, and a big, they play a very important role in terms of like the processes that we use to, select, make decisions, judgments, but there are also beliefs that are subject to change as well, right? So, so from that perspective, it would be useful to think about the role that maybe one's beliefs may have played in that learning task. And again, I'm kind of hard-pressed to see that, especially if you look at the overall results of the memory test. And those of you who didn't conduct it or maybe didn't check into that forum, you had two tests, one of which was just random words, and the second test, which was also somewhat random, not quite as much, and the participants had to act out the words. And the results were higher for that second test. So it's hard to see how the social cognitive theory really plays a role in that, unless we all have a higher sense of efficacy for recalling words that we can act at. But that is a possible explanation, but I didn't hear it. And even if that is an explanation, I guess, is it the best one to explain what was going on there? So that's one thing to think about moving forward. The other one that kind of came up was this idea of learning styles that came up in the color changing card trick forum. So, which I guess makes sense. It's a video, it's visual, so it's tapping into that mode, I guess. But and a couple people suggested, well, the implications for teachers are to maybe tap into a particular learning style and kind of leverage that. So again, is that the best explanation of what's going on there? Clearly, it seems pretty intuitive. And that is an explanation. I guess what I like to do to challenge those of you who have that particular belief as to whether that's the best explanation of what's going on there. Is it just that you're not a visual learner? That's why you didn't pick up on the color, the color changes, which hardly anybody does. Or is there another reason for that? And so here's my broad challenge moving forward, and that is to really kind of grapple with the theories that we're covering this term in terms of how they're explaining a particular learning phenomenon. That's what your learning project is centered around, but consider it in terms of things that are going on in this classroom, things that you're seeing in your everyday life. Some things provide a really good explanation for learning. Behaviors for Use of Learning provide a great explanation for things that were going on in that clip in The Big Bang Theory, and that Office clip, but probably not so much with the memory test. And learning styles, again, probably not so much for the memory test, although they do provide an explanation, but I think it's important to consider, why did everybody do better on the second test? Maybe we all pick kinesthetic learners. That is possible. I will say that I've conducted that experiment in classrooms with literally thousands of students, and almost always, I want to say, I don't have the figures, I didn't collect data, I guess, but just in terms of anecdotally, 99% of everybody does better the second time, and those who don't do better the second time don't do better because they memorize, their ceiling was really, really high on the first. They just did so well in the first test that they really had no place to go other than down. So yeah. So this next week, one of the concepts that we'll cover is conceptual change. So, and Ormrod offers a few suggestions on addressing conceptual change. And I'd like for you to try to practice that yourself. One of the recommendations is to, I have it here, I had it here, what is it specifically on page 268. Students must explicitly compare their existing beliefs with alternative explanations. And so I'd like for you to, think about your own beliefs about human learning and, kind of compare those beliefs, and if it's learning styles or whatever, compare those beliefs with the current theories that we're covering this term, this summer. And, really try to grapple with that in terms of like an explanation of what's going on. We may revisit learning styles in week 8. There's a little bit of wiggle room in week 8, but before we get there, I think it's important to entertain different ideas. So that's all I have. You guys have a great weekend.